Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. And to understand Revelation, right, the key parts, like Revelation 19, one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, it connects to 1 Samuel 17. The birds are connected. The formula used is very much connected. As we look at Revelation 19, we see that Christ is waging war with righteousness and justice in the Spirit of God. Now, when we're talking about martial arts, which in a sense nobody is an expert on, because there's so many different martial arts, right? We look at the idea of martial arts. I mean, it's all kinds of martial arts. They consider a lot of wrestling, like sumo wrestling and Greco-Roman wrestling. They consider those martial arts. There's Hapkido, and there's all kinds of martial arts you've never heard of with exotic names. A lot of people to this day have never heard of Filipino martial arts. Still, a lot of people have never heard of capoeira. They haven't heard of the various martial arts in Nigeria. They haven't heard of the wrestling, the Igbo wrestling. They haven't heard of some of these very secretive martial arts that I myself never really took part in, like these Igbo martial societies, secret societies. The Igbo tribe had many martial arts societies with many types of martial arts with weapons, all kinds of weapons, right? Short swords, long swords, curved swords, what have you. Daggers, knives. They were big on producing weapons and trying to fight with them, and looking at nature and trying to be inspired by the leopard and other animals as well. How to deal with, people shooting blow darts and bows and arrows, and there's all kinds of applications, all kinds of medicines associated, all kinds of stretches, and lots of interesting stuff there. The center of my research is not understanding all the martial arts in the world. That's not the core of my research. That is something I've dabbled in a bit. I've studied the opposition very well. I've studied their type. For example, if you were to look at a cat and a dog and a leopard and a shark and so on and so forth, you'd understand the threat that they pose against you to some degree. You wouldn't necessarily understand how they evolved, okay, how many teeth they have, how their heart beats with their brain size and the brain function to a T. There's a lot of other stuff you could understand. But you wouldn't necessarily take the time to understand it. So, as we look at the different martial arts, what is a very important idea that we must see here? The very important idea is that they're not in the divine order. Now, a lot of these people are nice people. There's a lot of attractive women doing different martial arts. There's a lot of nice old men, Asian old men, Filipino, African, white people doing their martial arts, Jews, right? And Krav Maga and whatever else they're doing these days. There's a lot of different people, and some of them are cooler than others, right? I mean, it's hard to miss that, right? Some of them are cooler than others. But they're all outside of the divine order. And this video is not about insulting them, it's about clarifying this. If you've made a conscious decision to not obey God, and you want to look cool, and you want to be in shape, or whatever you want to do, okay, God gave you free will, and you have the option to do that. Okay, it doesn't, it's not a good idea. You're going to go to hell, but you have the option to do that. Don't let your pride prevent yourself and your family and your friends from having the option to hear the top martial artist and his argument in regards to what he believes they should do. What he believes the differences of in the martial arts are, where it matters most. So when you see some of these guys, they're in the military or in law enforcement. Some of these guys are, they're kickboxers, they're MMA fighters, what have you. Some people even consider boxing, American boxing, some people even consider that a martial art. It gets very interesting in regards to the definition. One of the best definitions I've actually come across, strange enough, was on Wikipedia, where it did what a lot of other sites failed to do, which was explain martial arts in terms of one's intangible heritage, right? They're codified systems of combat that more often than not, at least, connect to one's heritage. Say you're a samurai, okay, It connects to the heritage that is associated with that accompanies that martial system. And so when I talk about this, oftentimes I feel a little bit bad because I know that people are very emotionally attached to these systems. But I still have to do what I have to do. Say I was at war with some other group of people. Say they had their group, their fief, their organization, their clan, and we meet in the field of battle, and there's a profound issue, and everyone starts taking off on each other. Swords are coming out, daggers, what have you, throwing darts. I mean, it's on and cracking. People are falling over dead left and right. Okay, people are getting decapitated, stabbed, gutted. It's real bloody, real messy. And I'm looking at these people while it's playing out, just like I was looking at it before, and I'm saying, hey, these guys are kind of cool. I like their style. It's a shame that I have to strike them down. But if it's the right thing to do, that's still what you have to do. And so it is with explaining this. If you're to look at pictures of the various martial arts before people edit them for petty reasons, you'd see sometimes very handsome people, some guys looking like they're a little bit nervous. Maybe they didn't want to be on camera. Maybe, their life is hard and they don't know when they're going to get killed. You see various pictures of martial artists. And if you were to see my picture, you would see the difference right away. You would see God in me, especially as I'm pointing out that you should look for it. Look for God in these pictures. You see God in me, and you see their systems and their gene expression, etc., in them. You would not see God in them. Now, I'll help you understand this here. Imagine you're walking through the jungles of Africa, and there's martial artists from all over the world there. Yeah, let's go back 4,000, you call it 5,000 years ago, around 3000 BC. And you see very early martial artists from all over the world, from near Asia, right, the Middle East, from southern Europe. Some of these guys took boats from other parts in Europe, right? They have some kind of combat system. And from various parts in Africa, in India, and so on and so forth. And as you approach, you see that there's a divine royal king that they all respect. He's proven through stick fighting. He's proven through sparring that he is the top martial artist, and he's from a very proud falcon martial art line. As you look around, you see that these guys, they've kind of went their own way. They don't follow orders from this person, but they're paying him respect because he's the top martial artist. And most of them, if not all, agree that there's a God that has given him power. And it goes back to 1 Samuel 17, right? This day I will strike you down and cut off your head, and the whole world will know that there's a God in Israel. Reminds me of the movie Ip Man, where Ip Man says that he's Ip Man and his system is Wing Chun, and someone else says he's so-and-so and his system is such and such. So Goliath in the story in his own way was saying he's Goliath, and his system is Dagonian, Philistinian, martial arts, or something to this effect, whatever you would call it. And David says that he's David, not yet king. He's a servant of Saul. That's how Goliath was referring to them. Are you not servants of Saul? And he said, is he not a Philistine? He said, whoever can beat the other person, instead of having everybody fight, they would use that to determine who serves who. Okay? So he was saying that's his war art, that's his system, that's his God, that's his philosophy, that's his spirit. And he's taken on this other person. Over the years, we've seen martial arts become something that's a lot more shallow than that. Now, to some degree, they wanted everyone to get along. To some degree, there's a bunch of governing class people who are coercing them and their families and threatening them and say, you better do it this way. And so that's been lost in translation. We've seen the book Fighting for Honor by this Professor T.J. Dush-Obi. He happens to be an Igbo too, if I'm not mistaken here. Pretty sure he is. But I don't know the person. I believe he even taught, I believe he's even a professor in Southern California. Never met the person that I'm aware of in my life. Igbos are a very scholarly group of people quite often. Right? Lots of them, they come here, they get good grades, they go into all kinds of scholarly pursuits in the white man's system and everything, make friends with every race you can imagine, what have you. So he knew a bunch of martial artists from all over the place. And they, he put them He gave them credit at the end of the book. There's a huge section at the end of this book where he's given credit to all kinds of people who helped him write the book. Okay, and he says that at some point in capoeira, there was a loss, in terms of people understanding the connection between drawing on spiritual power and doing what he called inverted kicks. This also has to do with crescent kicks, right? An inwardly circle-like kick where you strike with the inside part of your foot. Okay. Drawing on spiritual power and doing a somersault or a flip or, a cartwheel-like movement in capoeira. Because a lot of it is done in terms of what you might call ground fighting, right? And there's different semantics here and so on and so forth, where they're doing cartwheels and they're standing on their hands and doing kicks and they're doing flips and they're doing all kinds of acrobatic movements because it became very much a kind of performative martial art more than a combat martial art. And as the story goes, these people used to dance, and a lot of them, were obviously, it basically was developed by people on slave ships who were developing a variation of the existing Angolan martial art, whatever it might have been called before that. And they use various terms like kandeka and so on and so forth. And these are percussive arts, means striking, like, percussion, like playing the drum is striking, right? Striking to a tune, striking in a certain way, in a certain natural rhythm, right? It's percussion, right? Percussive and repercussion, right? The repercussions for dancing to the devil's tune and fighting to the devil's tune versus fighting to God's tune, okay? And some of these guys used to strike, church bells as part of, they're part of various churches and various groupings, and they do kicks and they do acrobatic events in front of a funerary procession or a marriage group of people or whatever, right? They'd perform at religious activities. According to the book, and it sounds like it's correct. And again, a lot of people went into writing this book. Okay, do I think that he's right about everything in the book? No. But do I believe that that's the general idea, give or take? Yes. So he cited specifically the inverted kicks. And he has diagrams at the back of his book to show you what he means. But it's really like every movement. Okay, if I was to kick or punch, I'm drawing on spiritual power. If I was to block, I'm drawing on spiritual power. As I come to face you, I'm drawing on spiritual power, even if we're sparring instead of fighting to the death. So there's a conscious connection. And there's a subconscious connection. And a lot of mind control is about manipulating the subconscious, the unconscious mind. Right? Supraliminal and subliminal messages. And things of that nature. And things that when I was younger, people didn't really take them that seriously. Say, yeah, I'm sure movies have subliminal messages, so what? But over time, people take these things very seriously. The militaries of the world have spent lots of money on these things. The corporations, psychologists, governments, they take them very, very seriously. Secret societies, cults, you name it. A lot of these cults were founded by intelligence agencies, right? As KGB, FSB, CIA, Mossad. They created some of these cults for the purpose of experimenting with mind control while trying to scapegoat other organizations that they made themselves, right? Front organizations, okay, to control the mind. So hopefully you have a pretty good feel for what martial arts are in art at this point. Okay. Martial arts start in Africa because human beings start in Africa. Part of the intangible heritage of all human beings is that we start in Africa. I often use the example of Native American, right? If Native Americans moved to Europe, and they all moved to Europe, let's say, they all moved to Poland, and 500 years later, they look back at it, are they going to say, hey, having lived in America all those years meant nothing to them, all that matters is their heritage in Poland? That would be stupid. And so it is stupid and disgraceful for the human beings of the world, who are all the offspring of Africans, to look at Africa and say to themselves, magically, there's nothing there. How could that be? That's where your ancestors are from. How can you claim to be proud of your blood and your bloodlines and your heritage and completely disregard Africa? How could you look at the existing traditions that came from God, more than traditions, the processes that came from God, and try to replace them with your mere human rules, customs, and traditions because you moved somewhere else, changed the way you look in a certain way for various reasons, climate, food, wars, diseases, whatever, mutations, and then say that your newfound ways, which aren't honest enough to factor in what Africa means in a way that's fair and just and right, are magically more sacred. And the word sacred is connected to moral, or it's not being used correctly. So it's more moral and sacred than when God made man in his image, in reality, not in a story that's misinterpreted by people who don't understand that the Garden of Eden is in the spiritual realm and things like that. But in a sense, it's in Africa. Mind, body, soul, spirit, land, spirit, what have you. God made man in his image, not just in the Garden of Eden, but also in Africa. Now, the flesh means nothing to some degree, but the fact that people start in Africa means something. That's part of understanding who we are. It's part of being oriented instead of disoriented. And you don't have to be Asian or Oriental to be oriented. And at this point, none of them, just like everyone else on the planet, are oriented. They're all disoriented. Because to truly understand who you are, you must come into the divine order. You must obey God through me, or you're a fugitive from reality. The overwhelmingly logical assumption about what to do is to obey God through me. Now, does your brain function correctly when you refuse to do that? No. Because you're committing crimes against God and the righteous and humanity, etc. So in a nutshell, so I don't want to go on and on about this. I can go on and on for hours and hours, right? You know, this is a fascinating topic. I like to talk about it sometimes. Okay. I'd love to talk about with anybody anytime they want, you know, as long as there's not something else I'm doing that's more important. Okay. So, I just got fumed to kind of lost my train of thought here. But to make a long story short, other martial arts are, and no offense to anybody, they're without a point. They're without the God spirit coming into the divine order. They're not conveying it. They're not drawing on it. So they're pointless. And the reason why there's so many different theories that people are living as if they're true all over the world is because they refuse to address the Africa argument, including black people themselves, including black people who have lived in Africa from the beginning. Their forefathers, for the sake of argument, never left Africa. They've always been there. They themselves are rejecting the Africa argument because it's not just, hey, man started in Africa, or he must have had this skin color or this kind of lips or this kind of nose or whatever. The argument is that there's a divine order in Africa. That not all people are equal in the eyes of God, including Africans themselves, be they black or Berber or whatever. That there's an order of righteousness. We see in Psalm 45. It says, you are the most excellent of men, most excellent of men. Okay, all these people who think that the founding fathers were Christians, how could you throw out Psalm 45? Where it says this person is the most excellent man. He's not equal to other men. He's greater. He's referred to as a mighty one, mighty warrior. So there's warriors and there's mighty warriors, and there's people who aren't warriors. And the most excellent of men is a mighty one, a mighty warrior who rides forth in the cause of truth, justice, and humility. He's greater than other people. There's not some scientist or some politician or a mere leader of a country said you are this mighty warrior who in the true spirit of God are riding forth in the cause of truth, justice, and humility. And for those of you who want to twist that, well, about Proverbs 16:12. In Proverbs 16:12, it says, the throne is established in righteousness. Is the throne a mere chair that anyone can sit in at any time because everyone's equal? No. It's a position that's exalted over other positions. The true throne. Now, if some crazy guy, builds a throne for himself, sits in it, and says to a bunch of ants, hey guys, I'm the king. Is he greater than the one who's the true king if no animals are following him? No one accepted the mark of the beast is following him? No. If that crazy guy convinced everyone on the planet, except for the one God set apart as king, to rally to him and kiss his lying ass, is he greater than the king because he has a physical throne in that sense? And every dumb fuck on the planet is following them? No. And when you don't understand these things to the point where you're living that understanding, then what you're doing is pointless. Whether you're a scientist, a politician, a preacher, a martial artist, no matter what it is. So they're drawing on the spirit of rebellion. There's a spectrum of how well they mean. There's a spectrum of how evil they are. But they're drawing on the spirit of cheating me out of my right to lead, which has caused every attractive female on this planet to shun me, which has caused me to be persecuted by what they would say in the movie Shaka Zulu, for example, by the scum of this land. And a lot of people learn better than they otherwise would watching a movie. And I think they put it very well in that movie. And what is a poem, compared to a movie? It's like the same thing. It's just art. They're quoting some guy when he's being poetic, so I'm quoting a movie. So what? I've been persecuted by the scum, the ignoble, those who lack character, those who cheat me out of my right to lead. And martial arts are supposed to be about building character. Can you build character in truth if you're wittingly or otherwise cheating the most righteous person that ever lived out of his right to lead, when your culture is designed to make it so the attractive women of your culture shun the most righteous guy? Is that building character? No. Those people are outside the gates, and they go to hell. Okay, so why did I get mad right there? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and they're very good reasons. One, martial is marital scrambled, as in marriage, and martial means to order and to arrange. Society is pure evil, people suffer, people die. Okay? Another one is the nature of the topic. Not every martial artist is like a kind Asian person. Okay? You know that some people want to falsely accuse me. They want to argue with me. Some people want to uphold the governing class, and they're very angry. They're part of a cult that has brainwashed them to hold people down at all costs, no matter if it ends the world or whatever. They've brainwashed them to persecute Jesus just so they can try to pretend that they look good to the world, that they can try to pretend that they're important. We're a bunch of females who may as well be, high maintenance, high priced escorts, kiss their ass in corporations and political buildings. What happened? What have you? So I got angry during the course of this video, during the first clip. This is a second clip. I got angry, and I made the second clip after I kind of calmed down, took a deep breath, tried to change my state of mind in various ways. I got angry because the topic, the nature of the topic is very serious. Because the Lord is a warrior. The Lord doesn't explain it like a hippie. The Lord explains it as a warrior. Proverbs 28:1. The wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. In Revelation, who's worthy to open the scroll? The Lion of Judah. This righteous and bold and wise and considerate righteous warrior. This righteous warrior soul. Part of the difference between, say, Kung Fu and FMA and American Taekwondo has to do with the structure, the order, and who is giving them orders. God is giving me orders. Everybody in the churches, everyone in these American martial arts and European, they're following the orders of the governing class. If they mess up, the governing class will be on their bumper. Other people the governing class hires. But the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If I mess up, which is not going to happen, because God set me apart for a reason. But if I did, God will be very angry. To the one whom much is given, much is expected. So what is it right? What do you think people think is right? Like I say in Acts, to obey God or to obey you? I love God with all my heart. To him who much is given, much is expected. God gave me this great heart, this wonderful heart, this wonderful family. A lot of my friends were very cool people too. God gave me so much. I will never shrink to fit. I will chastise everybody to the degree that God wants me to without hesitation. Just because I explain it doesn't mean I will ever shrink to fit. I wouldn't. As I said in the psalm before, and I'm not saying out of arrogance, but to shed light on the subject, on the best point of reference to use, I am righteous with honor and splendor. I was and I am righteous with honor and splendor. And I am a man of God, and nothing would ever change that. If people came to repent, the wrath of God that's conveyed through me, okay, if they came to repent with all their heart to make amends, to do the right thing, then I would forgive them. I tell you the truth about Luke 17. If your brother sins, rebuke him. Chastise him. Not necessarily verbally, but if you have to, verbally. If you're in the divine order, first remove the log from your own eye. Make sure you're right with God. Make sure you obey God through me. If he sins, you rebuke him. If he repents, which involves making amends, atoning for sin. See Zacchaeus, the tax collector. See Numbers 4, chapter 4 through 6. 4 through 5. I think it's chapter 5. It was actually Donald Trump that pointed that out by bringing it up the other day in one of his speeches. And I said, okay, I'm going to look up this chapter, see what he's saying. I said, oh, that's a good chapter. Very good chapter. Very interesting. And I'll go as far as to say that I took some pleasure and joy in reading that chapter. So I'll go and say, and I thank Donald Trump for pointing that out. I'm not endorsing him or anything, but I give credit where it's due. I'm a fair person. I'm not a conservative. I'll never be. But fair is fair. And whoever else brought that up. Okay. So you've got to atone. If your brother comes to the divine order, to come into the divine order, to enter through the gate, me, my soul, and he, with all of his heart, turns to God and wants to make amends and atone, then I will forgive them. People can't reproduce no matter what because of the divine plan, which is part of coming into the divine order, is accepting the divine commands and plan. You've got to give up your attachment to this world. You've got to give up your attachment to the flesh. If your brother sins, rebuke him. If he repents, if he loves God enough to repent and to commit to doing God's work, making amends, atoning, walking with God, skywalking with God in the spiritual realm, but don't you people see? I might like the Asian guy, the Capo, the Brazilian guy, the Angolan guy, the Filipino guy, whatever it is, the white guy. I might say, hey, they're kind of cool. But I'm here to do God's work. Not to kiss your ass because you're kind of cool. Or to be diplomatic because you're kind of cool. Or because you might give me a hard time. I have to do the work of God. Like Martin Luther King said, I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go to the mountaintop, Mount Zion, like Mount Horeb. And if you think the top martial artist ever possible, who's in complete submission to God, that's the only way it could be the top martial artist ever possible, can't get you there, then you've lost your mind. I am the way. I am the solar boat, as the Egyptians would say. I am the way.